This is the Breaking Bumps podcast, episode one. I'm here with Brad. Is it Brad Seippel?
That's correct. Yeah, Brad Seippel. My moniker is throughout all in lowercase, and I do production under my regular name, Brad
Okay.
Seippel. It's just coming from MIDI instruments. You can link instruments together in three different ways: in and an out signal, and you can route it as a through signal as well. So that's where the name comes from. I don't know how original it is, but I've never met another one. My main job is music audio engineer, you could say that, and then I do live music, electronic music, and I DJ as well. My earliest kind of background getting into music was kind of a product of the 90s because I was listening to punk rock and hip hop and electronic music and like all different things kind of all at the same time.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my introduction to music, was those three angles, you could say.
Right.
I grew up starting to play music in the late 90s and early 2000s. So I started learning bass guitar and software and all this type of stuff all around the same time. So that's a product of kind of what I'm doing now, is combining genres. I only started making ambient music seriously maybe about five years ago. So up until that point, I always involved percussion and beats. We could say I was a beat maker, and so just slowly, I kind of wanted to have some variation, and not every set had to follow the format of choruses and verses and drums and fills and all that. So ambient for me was just kind of to remove certain aspects to make it a little more limiting. And then from that limitation, just see where I can find space. So by like taking out the drums and just relying on these just melodic parts, it just made me think about the approach to writing a little bit different. With all of my sets, even the more club-focused percussive stuff, there is a difference every time I play it. So the way that it's kind of set up is there are some samples that they're able to be looped, and then there's stuff that I can play on top of that. So there's no fixed grid of the song that it will be the same every time, but the samples and the notes and stuff can be brought in and out. So I would say a large part of it is just improv, and the other part is kind of playing on top live. So there's always a physical element to it. Some elements will be the same. Some keys might be the same, or some melodies, but for all intents and purposes, it's a different living thing each time. I often mix the songs together. I loop parts of them and mix them together to make a new kind of sound from the song. I prefer to release my music on some physical format. Tape has been the one I've done the most of in recent years. This year I put out a vinyl for the first time, which was really nice for a record called Ghost Lineage. But a great deal of how I listen to music is streaming and digital, MP3. Cassettes a novelty. I collect cassettes, but most of the listening is off of my computer or my phone. I love vinyl, and I have friends that collect and DJ out, but I just don't have the collection. So I usually do it digitally with the USB stick. All you have to do is show up to the event with your USB stick. You can be ready to go. I mean, just recently, this last month, I've seen a lot of different things. There was a pipa player that came through Beijing named Rubin, and that's more traditional Chinese lute style music. So I saw that at the National Theater, and then for a juxtaposition, there was a whole noise festival the week before that, where it's 3 nights of very avant-garde performance art and noise music. So that's the kind of performance that I went to recently. And then also some club nights where you have DJs playing anything from techno to house music. So I like to spice it up and do different things. Let's say that there are genres I like more than others. So I have some friends that are more into techno or more into metal but I wouldn't say that either of those are really up there on my list of favorite genres. But you can always find good music in every genre if you just know where to look. So it's kind of good to keep an open mind. There's I try to have a blend of focusing on what's going on in China because I'm here. I don't know, at one point in my life I won't be here anymore, so I really want to know a lot about the Chinese scene, but I also try to pay attention to, international things of, what's going on in the UK and North America and stuff like that. But I guess what I've been listening to recently, I've been doing some deep dives on some like older, like hardcore and emo stuff. Dark Side of the Moon was part of the CD carousel that my father had, and he would often put on that and other stuff from the 70s and early 80s. So Dark Side of the Moon was always it was there, and I listened to it quite a lot and really appreciated it in high school a little bit more than when I was like a middle school student. Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where you grow up with your parents and everything, and you don't actually, unless you sit down and listen to music with them, you miss out on that part of their life when they were younger and they bought things and they listened to music. So I got a different cross section from both parents on what their record collections were. I grew up with a lot of on my mom's and a lot of evangelical like Christian rock. Even as a kid, I didn't dig it. It was trying to make music cool, but like kind of failing at it. I guess the message is okay, but the style of music just always rubbed me the wrong way. And then I guess like kind of more jam band stuff like Brown Eyed Girl and Mustang Sally. Like I've heard bands cover these songs so many times. So while they are great songs, they've kind of been played out, in my opinion. So recently I've been listening to a group called Loma Prieta from like 2008. LOMAPRIETA. It's kind of a little bit more on the screamy side of hardcore and emo. We're talking about chill music, I think, before we started this podcast. So some ambient music that I go back to, like Tim Hecker and R. Benny are some ambient artists that I quite like to, have a different spin to things sometimes. I like to actually step away from music and, like watch videos or documentaries and stuff like that, which, they do have their own music as soundtracks, but sometimes I don't want to just be listening. I want to watch something as well. I really think that video and music, they go together really well, especially for electronic music. Right now I'm working on a film score for a short film called Detour. It's a film being made in Germany. So I'm doing the soundtrack for that. Just like stuff that I would like to do. There's some stuff like sound exhibitions, which are kind of cool. Even an arena that I haven't dove into is video game music, and that's always something I'd like to know a little bit more about in the future. A lot of electronic music is not very visually stimulating as the audience goes. A lot of times it's someone sitting behind gear or a computer that not everyone knows about. So we can connect with someone playing a guitar or singing a song, but to have something visual to complement the music, I think is very important. Not always necessary, but I like to have some sort of visual if I can, whether it's something I make myself or I work with a videographer or a VJ. A VJ can work alongside a DJ or a musician or any artist, or they can be one and the same. Yeah. I like it when you have another person to bounce off of, especially when it's fluid. Like the visuals are changing with the music. It's a true live experience. So it is something that still exists, and whenever I see it, if it's an interesting approach, then it's always nice. Working with a dancer live. I also do a lot with modern dance and contemporary dance. So I think those things just add more to the music when they're done well. Field recording is a big part of my music as well. I feel like that's a way to add an organic touch to digital music, which can sometimes feel very plastic. And I like to go out to record like environments. When I first
Yeah.
came to China, I was recording all over the city in Beijing. I was in the alleyways and the hutongs, and just capturing all this hustle and bustle. But recently, I've been trying to focus more on certain concepts. Like maybe I want to have a soundscape where there's no cars or no speaking, no birds, and kind of give myself a goal. And so I do a lot of field recording in my music. And as far as other type of sampling, I like going through physical media like tapes and vinyl and finding cool loops or odd sounds and then manipulating them after that and putting them in my music. I would say, you can really in about a week, that's a good way for me to judge how I'm writing. I've done things where it's been real quick, a couple hours, and I wrote it, and then I've spent lots of time going back to things and fixing things. Even to like a year took me to finish certain things. So yeah, I would say if I'm really feeling it, in about a week, I can kind of get a rough sketch of what I want to do. It really depends on what it's going to be. I have a short attention span, so I like shorter songs. Anywhere from 2 to 4 minutes is kind of, I think, a sweet spot. But if you're doing a big ambient soundscape, you might want to go, have one piece that's just 20 minutes, and that's okay. So yeah, I like things to be somewhat shorter. I like brevity and some shortness to things. So I try not to go too long in my songs. This is a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and I think it was cool talking about music. Find me, on Instagram, Facebook. If you're in on the China webs, you can find me on NetEase and Xiaohongshu. Well, I just really recently did a series of ambient pipa stuff called Perilune. You can find the whole performance on my YouTube, so I recommend checking that out. I'm from the mindset of the selector is a little bit more important than the gear is kind of secondary. What you're choosing to play and how you read the audience and everything. I think I just destroyed my shins doing jumping stairs and all kinds of stuff as a kid. BMX was something that I loved doing as a teenager up until like university, and it's kind of adjacent to motocross. I think a lot of the same people in the same shops were having it, so that was a really good time for both sports. I remember distinctly building jumps. We would find old washing machines or whatever we could find, cover them with dirt, and then jump them until the Karens of the neighborhoods would have us tear them down or something. So yeah, that was my BMX. Hardcore Haro fan, Dave Mira and Ryan Nyquist, or I believe that's how you said it. Those were like people I would watch all the time. There was a VHS called Candy that I would just watch and try to just see what we could reproduce.